So Nick's golden rule number 3, to choose medication as the only and or the first option is not an option. Okay, it's just not really on in terms of managing these behaviours. This is another skeptic's view of the way that the drug companies are bringing us up. Different medications that they like us to take through our lives. 0 to 4 is amoxicillin for the ear infections. 4 to 12 we get the Ritalin. Then we get into the teenage years and we want to look good, so we're into the appetite suppressants. And then we get to exam time at uni and we need the no doses to keep us awake. And then we get to being the parent who's got the kid who's got the ADHD, so we need the Prozac. And then because of all these drugs we've taken over the years, when we get into our middle age, we need to start taking antacids. And then once you're over 65, they just give you anything that's left, just to keep you going. So can it be cured? Since there's currently nowhere to cure ADHD, the goal of treatment is to enhance the individual's ability to cope with it. And that just makes sense, doesn't it? If this is a genetic disorder, if it is things going on in your brain, then it's not just going to disappear with anything that you do, whether it be medications or vitamins or whatever. But you need to look at long-term strategies to enhance a person's ability to survive, so to speak. So the other cornerstone of conventional treatment is behaviour training. So we know that more than a third treated with behavioural techniques alone without anything else can improve their ADHD symptoms. So it should be something that should probably be trialled. And the bottom lines to any of these strategies are structured daily routines, daily schedule and time limits. You know how these kids seem to be less structured? They seem to be harder to keep them within boundaries. But almost the paradox of this is that they actually work better in a structured environment. And if they've got limits and boundaries that they can work within, if you can keep them within those boundaries, then they function better. Paying attention when spoken to. We all know this, don't you? You talk to a kid and if they're not looking at you and if they're not close to you, if they've got your back to you, if they're leaving the room, then it hasn't gone in, okay? So most of us have probably learnt these strategies if you've got children affected by this. In fact, if you've got children, you've probably found this a pretty good strategy. Teaching kids to behave. So some of the key things is building rapport. You've got to have dialogue. You've got to have a relationship with these kids. The tendency is with these kids is for people to draw away from them. And the feeling is that these are kids that don't like relationships and they want to go off in the corner and play by themselves or do their own thing. In fact, these kids need to be encouraged and drawn into relationships. So you've got to use all the tricks you can to do that with them. They need rewards, they need good behaviours. This is why kids like this really love computer games, because they're getting continuous feedback. You're getting a good score, you've just got a bonus score. So we need to try and build that into their lifestyle, that they're getting lots of rewards. Making deals, that you need to try and get them involved. How are you going to do this? What are you going to get if you do this? Getting them involved in almost like a contract. My brother used to take this to extreme. When he used to babysit my nephews, he used to actually get them to sign a contract. I don't think it worked, but anyway, he thought it was good. Timeouts, you do need to have discipline as well. You need to use tried and trusted systems of discipline to keep these kids, learning the boundaries and figuring out how they fit into their surrounds. And communicating feelings, this is their feelings. You need to try and draw out their feelings if you possibly can, because it's very difficult for them. Because of that disconnectedness in their nervous system, they have trouble feeling and expressing their emotions. So you've got to try and find strategies of encouraging them and rewarding them for doing this. So here are kind of my questions. When I really started to get into looking at this topic, it was almost like I ended up with more questions than answers to a degree. So are the behavioural problems of ADHD enough to warrant the label of mental illness? Because when you accept that diagnosis, that's almost what you're kind of accepting in medical and scientific terms, is you're sort of saying, okay, I'm going to accept that my kid has got this thing and I'm going to put him in that box. But if you're not comfortable with that, are psychoactive drugs the treatment of choice? Because it literally determines the way that you're going to behave in terms of the decisions you make about whether your child has an illness, whether it's just something else going on in their life. But you need to really think through the decision to go down the medication. And obviously, are we as people, are we as parents, are we as people who may even suffer it with ourselves, are we willing to go back to school to help ourselves and to help our child? It's literally, we've got to learn different strategies than what works with everyone else. So what I want to do now is I want to go through some of the natural ways of perhaps trying to manage, change, improve the behaviour or even the scholastic performance of these kids. And what you'll find is all of the strategies that I'm teaching you tonight are literally trying to tap into that brain reward cascade. They're trying to work with the nervous system, trying to make your child's brain work a little bit more effectively perhaps. So what we're going to be talking about is going to be looking at diet. You know, there's questions about diet. Will it work? Won't it work? Vitamins and supplements, you know, are the things that you can give your child to help their brain to function better. Chiropractic, you know, I'm a chiropractor. What am I doing talking about ADHD? Auriculotherapy or even acupuncture, you know, can they have a role to play? Training kids, you know, there are alternative behavioural programs out there as well that you may be interested in. And obviously retraining parents, you know, as parents we perhaps need to look at how do we get information, how do we get better at looking after these kids. And we're going to look at some cosmic debris as well. We're going to look at some different issues that you know, just little 1%ers that you can add into your lifestyle to perhaps help. So diet's interesting because I was watching a video just before I got here that was one of the top experts in America and very much in the medical conventional sort of model. And what he said was that there is no evidence that diet causes ADHD. And to me that's mixing language because we know that nobody really knows what causes ADHD. We've got theories, but what we know from diet is that we can improve ADHD. You know, so occasionally I've even heard of people say they've asked their paediatrician and they said, look, there's no evidence that diet will cure ADHD. So that's right, diet doesn't cause it and diet doesn't cure it, but you can get some quite significant improvements. And probably the most well known is the Feingold diets. It's been around since the 60s, I think. I had one mother at one of these workshops and she said how back in the 70s, before, she knew her kids were a bit feral, but nobody really knew why. But she actually found this diet and used it and found it almost, you know, almost miraculous with her kids. So it's been around for a long time and there is quite a lot of research that's been done into how it works. I guess the weakness of the Feingold diet is it's very much about what you can't eat. It doesn't tell you a lot about what you should eat, but that's good to know. You need to know what to avoid. So one of the first things that they look at is allergies. Does your kid have food allergies? And the most common are dairy, wheat, and salicylates, which are chemicals which are found in a lot of fruits and a lot of different food groups. So you need to become a little bit of an investigative journalist almost. You can do exclusion diets, you can do detox diets, you can do different ways of trying to figure out whether your child's allergic. Sometimes if you just take dairy out for 2 weeks, you know, and then put it in, you'll often see quite big changes if they've got an allergy. The same with wheat. Reduce sugar. You know, these kids are low sugar. They really need. What happens if you're taking too much simple sugars? All of us do it. We get on this spiral of our blood sugar goes up and then it goes down. And then we feel low, so we have some sugar, so it goes up in the blood sugar, and then your body reacts and drops it down again. So you get on this hypo-hyper sort of a roller coaster. And the last thing you need in your brain is this sort of up and down if you've already got you know, chemicals that aren't working too well. So these kids need to be low GI kids, you know, that glycemic index diet. Most of us in our culture, we know the cliches about food additives, flavours, colourings, you know. Uh-oh, he's had some red again, watch now, he's going to be up the wall in 5 minutes. You know, we all kind of know that, but we do need to avoid some of those particular colourings. I think it's reds and oranges and greens, you know, they're sort of the danger colours. Preservatives, you need to look out for metabisulfates and things like that are in a lot of foods, you know, muesli bars and fruit sticks and even dried fruits, things like that, that are high in preservatives. And MSG is obviously a big one too. I mean, most of us know what it does to our brain. If you've been to a Chinese restaurant, you know, you can't sleep that night because your brain's doing weird things and you're having to drink heaps of water and that classical sort of reaction to MSG. As we already mentioned, a big part of the Feingold diet is minimising caffeine, you know, getting caffeine out of the kids' system. And keeping a diet diary, this is something that they really get you to do, is to literally keep a diary of what the kids eat in each day.